Silence. Listen carefully. I am the guardian of forbidden gates. I am not here to entertain you. I am here to warn you. What will be told today cannot be forgotten, and those who hear it bear the curse of knowing. If you choose to continue, know there is no turning back. So sit and face the darkness with me. I never used to think much about dreams. To me, they were just random electrical discharges, the brain trying to make sense of the day's chaos. I never took them seriously. I had no patience for mystical interpretations, for people claiming dreams held warnings or omens, until I became the warning. I don't even remember exactly when it started. It was just another night. Too late for coffee, too early for real sleep. I lay down like always, listening to the old building creak, trying to convince myself there was nothing out there but the wind. The first dream didn't seem like much at first. Just a corridor, impossibly long. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a near-living hum, burning out one by one as I moved. The floor was that dingy beige you can almost smell. Mildew, old water damage. I heard nothing but my own breathing. And at the far end, always at the far end, stood a man with his back turned. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. I couldn't see him clearly, but I felt an anger coming off him, like a caged animal. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. I ran, and with every step, the floor gave slightly like quicksand. No matter how fast I ran, I never got any closer. The lights kept flickering, blinking like eyes opening and closing. I woke up soaked in sweat, panting, tasting blood where I'd bitten my tongue. I told myself, just a dream, but it came back. Another night. Same corridor. Same buzzing lights. Slower this time. Almost mocking. He was still there. Still facing away, but closer. I could see the outline of his shoulders. The worn, rumpled suit. Something was wrong with the way he breathed. A slight movement. Like he wasn't made to breathe but was trying to imitate it. I woke up with my sheets glued to my chest, shaking, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear. I didn't tell anyone. How do you even explain that without sounding weak, crazy, or like you're lying? So I kept quiet. But the image of that corridor followed me. Whenever I closed my eyes, those sickly colors waited for me. I started avoiding sleep. I felt heavy, sluggish, unable to think straight. I drank too much coffee, yawned constantly, messed up even simple things at work. I was so tired I cried in the bathroom without knowing why. But no matter what I did, when sleep finally took me, he was there, always there. At some point I stopped pretending it was just a nightmare. It wasn't random. It was always the same. The same sequence, the same sounds. The only thing that changed was him getting closer. I avoided mirrors. It felt like the corridor was reflected behind me in the glass. I refused to look down long hallways at night, afraid I'd see someone standing there, waiting for me to blink so they could vanish. Some nights I stayed up until dawn, but you can't fight sleep forever. It always wins. When it did, I was back there. The worst part wasn't the dream itself. It was waking up knowing I'd dream it again. It was that slow, crawling fear that rotted me from the inside out. And then I realized I wasn't the only one, because sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night, in that suffocating silence, certain that somewhere in the same building, in some other thin-walled room, someone else was dreaming it too. I didn't need to ask. I just knew. The corridor wasn't mine. It was ours, and he was waiting for all of us. I started noticing the signs long before I admitted it. It was like the dream, so persistent, began leaking into the empty spaces of my waking life. It started with small coincidences. I saw corridors everywhere, in old buildings downtown, in underground parking garages, in hospital hallways. They weren't identical, but something about the light, the wrong length, the off-kilter angles made my chest tighten. Sometimes it was just a feeling, like the world froze for half a second, a silence that didn't belong. The buzz of a light overhead, droning in the exact rhythm I heard in my dreams. I told myself it was paranoia, whispered it like a prayer, but it got worse. I couldn't look myself in the eyes in the mirror anymore. Whenever I tried, the reflection would tremble slightly, with a tiny delay, like the glass was a lazy portal struggling to keep up. I tested it. I stared until my eyes watered, and for a single heartbeat, I swear they moved without me. I stopped using mirrors, but you can't avoid reflections. Windows on the bus, the black screen of a phone turned off, the metallic shine of an elevator door. There was always something in the background, a blur, a silhouette, subtle enough to dismiss, but never subtle enough to forget. The dreams kept coming. The corridor didn't change, filthy, claustrophobic, endless. The lights flickered in their slow, mocking pulse, and he was always there, always with his back turned. Sometimes I woke to sharp cracks. For a moment, I thought bones were snapping in the dark. Then I realized it was the sound of my own fingers, clenched so tight they popped. I didn't remember waking up. That was the first real sign something had changed. I was forgetting the transition between sleeping and waking. Some mornings I opened my eyes and felt certain I was still dreaming. Everything was too vivid, but wrong. The colors a little off, a smell I couldn't name, a muffled sound of breathing from another room, even though I lived alone. I was terrified to fall asleep on the couch, afraid to close my eyes for too long in the shower. I started locking every door, the bathroom, my bedroom, even the closet. It didn't help me sleep better, but at least I felt like I was trying. I read about lucid dreaming. People said you just had to take control, but I felt the opposite, that the more I tried to control it, the more aware of me it became. The man at the end of the corridor wasn't a symbol. He wasn't some personified trauma. He was a visitor. I felt it in the way he stood so still, not like a statue, like something refusing to give me the satisfaction of moving. As time went on, even awake, I started seeing motionless shadows in hallways, at work, late, when everyone else had gone, a human shape at the end of a badly lit corridor. I never walked toward it, never, but there were nights I woke standing by the door, my hand on the knob. I didn't remember getting up, didn't remember deciding anything, just felt the sweat running down my spine, because even with every lock and barricade, he kept getting closer. I lost count of how many nights I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a recurring nightmare, a psychological issue, something medication could fix. But those excuses fell apart when he changed. At first, I didn't see it. The changes were too small to admit. The corridor seemed shorter. The lights burned out faster. There was a rancid smell in the air, like rotting meat left in the sun. And he was closer, still with his back to me, but so near I could see the frayed fabric of his suit, the seams coming undone at the shoulders. The first time I realized he wasn't just part of a dream was when I woke to knocking on my bedroom wall. 3 slow, heavy thuds. I sat up in bed, shaking, soaked in sweat, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I stayed frozen for minutes. There was no more sound, but I knew. Somehow, I knew it was him. After that, the dream began to bleed into waking life. I started blacking out. I'd go to get water in the kitchen and come to standing in the hallway staring at the bathroom door for minutes. I found scratches on my arms, 3 parallel lines, precise, almost careful, but I knew my own nails weren't sharp enough for that. The reflections got worse. I avoided mirrors, but I couldn't avoid bus windows or shop fronts at night. Always, in the glass, there was something, a dark shape, a figure with no face. One night I woke up on the couch with the TV off. In its black screen, I saw a man standing behind me. No features, just a rigid, unnatural shape. I blinked, and he was gone. I started leaving all the lights on, but even then, the darkness found ways in. Corners of my room seemed deeper than they should be. Parts of the walls swallowed light instead of reflecting it. In one dream, he turned his head just slightly, not enough for me to see his face, but enough to let me know he could. I woke gagging on my own scream. That's when I understood. He knew I was trying to see him, and he wasn't going to allow it. I slept less. I became a zombie during the day. At work, I typed nonsense. I ate without tasting anything. My friend said I looked pale, but all I could think about was not sleeping. Then came the voices, low, whispered, not whole words, just syllables, fragments. Whenever I drifted for even seconds, they appeared, not in the dream, but at its edge, inviting, beckoning. It wasn't fear anymore. It was an invitation, a promise. I became certain he wanted something, and he was willing to wait forever to get it. At some point, I lost my fear of trying to understand. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe a kind of sick curiosity. I couldn't stand feeling hunted by something I didn't understand. So I decided to fight back. I started studying lucid dreaming, watched videos, read posts. People claimed they could fly, summon objects, confront monsters. They said if you realized you were dreaming, you could take control. It sounded ridiculous, but I was desperate. That night, I prepared. I covered my apartment in sticky notes that said, "Are you dreaming?" to force myself to check reality constantly. I wore a rubber band on my wrist to snap whenever I felt drowsy, conditioning my brain to recognize the border. It didn't help. When I fell asleep, I woke up in the corridor, as always, but something was different. I realized instantly that I was dreaming. The air was thicker, almost greasy. The lights hummed like trapped flies. The floor felt spongy, like it floated on mud. He was there, closer than ever. So close I could see the worn fabric of his suit, the threads fraying. Still turned away. I tried to speak, but no sound came. Just a dry animal gasp. I moved toward him. Each step was a struggle. My feet sank and stuck, but I kept going. I wanted to see him. I needed to. He didn't move until he did. It was subtle. His shoulders tensed, his head inclined just a fraction. I froze. The air compressed around me, like the corridor was breathing with me. A deep, dull cracking noise echoed, like bones twisting. Then he began to turn. So slow, no hurry. My stomach twisted, a terror so primal, it wasn't even human. Every cell in my body screamed to shut my eyes, but I couldn't. I was trapped by the need to see. For a split second, I saw something. Not a face, not exactly. More like a hole in reality, a wound that pulsed and bled wrongness. I woke choking so hard I fell out of bed. I tore my shirt with my nails trying to breathe. Blood dripped from my lips. I'd bitten my tongue so deep the flesh split. After that, it got worse. I didn't just dream when I slept. I'd doze on the bus and find myself in the corridor. Rest my head on my desk at work for a second and hear the buzzing lights. I started losing time. I'd leave to buy bread and come back to find I'd been standing on the sidewalk for minutes, staring at dark shop windows that held reflections that weren't mine alone. Some days I was sure he was waiting on the other side of my front door. No knocks, no rattling of the knob, just waiting. I stopped leaving the apartment. I nailed windows shut, pushed furniture against the door. But even then, when I slept, and I always slept, I was back. I didn't run anymore. I didn't scream. I just stared at him. And he, patient, unmoving, breathed with me, as if studying me, as if waiting for the exact moment I'd break. That was the worst dream. The last before I understood there was no real boundary left between sleep and waking. It started the same, the breathing corridor, the buzzing lights, that moldy, suffocating stink. But this time I wasn't alone. I felt presences. I couldn't see anything except him, still with his back to me, but the air was crowded, heavy. Like invisible crowds pressed into the dark corners, holding their breath to watch. The sound changed, no longer just electric humming, breathing, wet, labored, perfectly synchronized with mine. I felt naked, exposed. I tried to walk. This time the floor didn't sink. It curved, like living flesh, pulsing under my weight. Each step squelched with wet cracks, like ribs snapping. I couldn't stop. My feet moved on their own. I wanted to run backward, but I only moved forward, toward him, closer, closer. I was suffocating. When I was so close I could have touched him, I saw something I'd never noticed. He was trembling, barely, like something barely contained, like an animal starving. The air smelled metallic. He started to turn, so slow, so deliberate. I felt the tears rising, hot and salty before they even fell. My knees went weak, but I didn't collapse. I couldn't. The sound around me became a single shrieking whistle. Blood trickled from my ears. He turned. I saw, no, my brain wouldn't see it. It refused. It was like a hole in existence, a space that couldn't hold form. But I felt his face. It spilled into me, into my eyes, into my thoughts, like opening a door onto a storm of bones and teeth and whispers. I felt my mind splinter, and then I woke up, but not in bed. I was standing in my apartment hallway, shirtless, trembling, feet bare on the cold tile. The front door wide open. Wind howled through. I didn't remember getting up. Didn't remember unlocking anything. There was blood on the doorknob. My arms were covered in scratches, 3 neat parallel lines. My face burned. I touched my jaw and felt torn skin, like teeth had bitten it. Dried blood caked under my fingernails. I stumbled back inside, slamming the door, sobbing without sound, my mouth too ruined to form words. The rest of the night was a blur. I locked myself in the bathroom, shaking, staring at myself in the mirror. And for the first time, I saw it. Not him behind me, but me, smiling, just for a second. But that was enough. I punched the mirror until my knuckles split. Glass rained into the sink, glinting like broken teeth. My reflection fractured into dozens of trembling faces, all smiling. I stopped screaming when I realized there was no sound at all. None from me, none from the world. Just silence, heavy, like everything was waiting to see what I would do next. After that night, something broke in me. Not in a dramatic, sudden way. Worse than that, I still functioned, ate, worked, sent messages with emojis to seem normal. But inside was a deep, cold silence. The world felt like a badly built dream. Everything slightly wrong, colors duller, other people's voices reaching me like they traveled through dirty water. I tried to sleep as little as possible. I sat in hard chairs to doze, jerking myself awake every few seconds, trying to avoid falling all the way in. But when sleep won, it was brutal. It dragged me down like black water. And he was always there, always. Now I didn't even have to run. He wasn't far away anymore. Sometimes I woke inside the dream just steps from him. I could smell rot, hear wet, cutting sounds. But the worst part wasn't him. It was knowing I recognized him. Something in the slope of his shoulders, the crumpled suit, the breathing. It was familiar. Like a relative you hadn't seen in years. Like looking at an old photo and realizing you had the same dead eyes. I tried to wake up. I slammed my head into the walls of the dream, tore at my own face. But the dream didn't end. One time, or night, or whatever, I opened my eyes and realized I was in the real hallway of my building, filthy, dim, stinking of trash. I was standing, covered in blood, shivering, barefoot, my hands raw, my fingernails ripped halfway off. I didn't remember leaving my apartment, didn't remember unlocking the door. but there was blood on the handle. I stood there for what felt like hours, wind howling down the corridor, thinking, I'm not going back in, because I knew he was inside, or worse, I knew I was him. After that, I stopped trying to sleep properly, nodded off for seconds at a time, always jerked back awake, heart slamming, fighting it. But he was patient. No matter how many times I escaped, he waited. Sometimes I saw him while awake, in the kitchen shadows, in the blank microwave door, in standing water in the drain, always with his back turned, waiting to turn. And I knew that when he finally turned all the way, there would be no coming back. I'm not telling this expecting anyone to save me. I don't even know why I'm writing it. Maybe just so it's recorded. So someone, somewhere, will understand that dreams can hunt you, that sometimes they aren't metaphors, they're invitations. And I know one day I'll accept, that I'll stop resisting. And when that happens, I won't wake up again. Or worse, I will, but it won't be me anymore.
You meddle with forces beyond your comprehension. Turn back before it is too late.
I never really trusted my dreams. I always treated them like background noise, those strange images that dissolve over breakfast without any real importance. It was easy to ignore them, until they started following me. I don't remember the first sign exactly. Maybe it was just a vague sense of wrongness, a subtle change in my room when I woke up, a muffled sound that didn't belong anywhere, the morning light coming in with a color that didn't match the real world. Small things, easy to explain away. I told myself it was just my brain waking up slowly, but little by little, the line between dreaming and being awake started to wear thin. There were nights when I could have sworn I'd woken up. I'd sit up in bed, breathing deeply, looking around my room, but something was off. The walls seemed too smooth, like they were painted over empty space. The sound of cars outside was like a cheap recording on a loop, lifeless. I'd pinch myself until it hurt, but I wouldn't wake up. Eventually, I'd escape. I'd wake up for real, feeling sick, like I'd run for miles. But even with my eyes open, that sticky feeling from the dream clung to my skin. I thought it would pass, but it never did. It only got worse. At some point, I became afraid to fall asleep. I'd sit in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. I'd drink cold coffee until my stomach turned. My eyes would burn. I knew what was waiting if I gave in. A room that was almost my room, almost. Same size, same bed, same dresser. But there was a crushing silence, an emptiness in the air that weighed on my lungs. No wind, no sound but my own breathing. It felt like a tomb, and I always woke up there, always. I stopped talking to people about it. No one understands. They smile, say everyone has nightmares, that it's just the subconscious working things out. But they don't know. They don't wake up in a place designed to keep them in, a place that learns from their fears. And I know, even as I say this now, that no one will really get it. But I can't stay silent anymore. At first it was easy to make excuses. I convinced myself I was oversleeping, that my brain played tricks when I woke up too fast. The first clues were so small they felt like jokes. The digital clock on my nightstand would spin backward for a second. A creak in the wardrobe that sounded like a sigh. A patch of mold on the wall that changed shape when I blinked. Things anyone would blame on being tired, but they weren't. I knew they weren't. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was freezing, but the air was dead still. The window was locked, but frost was forming inside the glass. I looked at the door and was sure I'd blocked it with the dresser before sleeping. I remembered pushing it, but there it was, slightly ajar, like someone had entered without a sound. I sat up with my heart hammering, but I didn't move. I stayed on the bed for endless minutes, too afraid to do anything. That's when I realized I couldn't hear anything. Not my heart, not my breathing. The silence was so complete it hurt my ears. And when I finally managed to exhale, it came out as a low, involuntary moan, a sound that didn't feel like mine. I shoved the dresser back against the door, shaking so badly I banged my knee on the wood. That was the first undeniable sign something was really wrong. It wasn't just a nightmare. It was the place I was waking up in, and it was changing to keep me there. The changes got bolder. I stopped knowing when I was falling asleep. I'd doze off on the couch and wake up in bed with no memory of moving. Sometimes, even with my eyes open, I'd see the room shimmer, like the air itself was boiling. One night I woke to a heavy, muffled noise. I turned my head and saw the dresser sliding by itself across the floor. Slow, deliberate, like something was pushing it from the inside. I didn't move. I couldn't. My breath stuck in my throat. The air felt solid, impossible to swallow. The dresser stopped in the middle of the room. It just sat there. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the bed until dawn, staring at that thing out of place, like a witness to a crime no one else saw. After that, I started seeing figures in the corners. At first, just thicker shadows. Dark patches my tired eyes might invent, but then they gained shape. Legs, arms, heads bent too far or upside down, always motionless, always at the edge of my vision. I never dared look directly, because I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to pretend I was awake anymore. I tried to fight it. I started taking pills to stay awake, drank coffee until my stomach burned, splashed cold water on my face, pinched myself until bruises bloomed purple. None of it worked. My body gave in, and I woke up there, always there. The room felt more and more like mine, identical, but wrong. The colors slightly too saturated, the floorboards shining like polished meat. The walls seemed to breathe, swelling and deflating slowly like a diseased lung. I began to explore. Instead of waiting in bed for the terror to come to me, I got up, walked to the door, tried to open it. The handle turned, but it always led to the same room. No matter how many times I crossed the threshold, I'd open the door, hold my breath, step forward, and there it was again. The bed, the dresser, the window with its frosted glass. Each time I did it, the room changed a little more. I started seeing inscriptions on the walls, jagged letters, scratched as if by a broken hand, phrases that made no sense. Wake up, not yours. You promised. I tried to scrape the words off with my nails, but they were gouged deep into the plaster, crumbling into pale dust. I began talking to myself out loud, asking, "Are you dreaming? Are you awake?" My voice came out warped, like another mouth was speaking over mine. Sometimes I'd laugh without meaning to, a hoarse sound, like it had been swallowed by something bigger. Eventually I accepted there were no rules, and in accepting that, I broke the last barrier. The worst night of all began with me waking up in absolute darkness. No streetlight glow, no ambient shine from the window, just black. I groped at the blanket, trying to remember where I was. It was cold, wet. It smelled foul, like something had died there. I stood up shaking, my feet sinking slightly into a floor that shouldn't give. It was like walking on something alive. I reached out for the wall. It pulsed, a slow, steady vibration, like a giant heart. I cried without sound, hot tears sliding over freezing skin. I took a step, and another. The floor creaked like breaking ribs. I touched the door. There was no seam. It was smooth, continuous, no handle. I knocked. Nothing answered. The air thinned. My vision narrowed, tunneling like a camera lens closing. In the darkness, shapes emerged. Human forms pressed into the walls. Limbs too thin. Faces with no eyes, just gaping. Stitched mouths. They trembled as if sobbing silently. I felt an urge to join them, to stay there, become part of the wall. but something was waiting in the center of the room. I knew it. It was me, lying there, sleeping, my own body, pale, covered in scars that pulsed like toothless mouths. I got closer, so close I could feel the feeble, dying heat. I leaned over my own face and saw myself smiling. Without opening my eyes, without waking up, I raised my hand, and I don't know if I meant to wake myself up or kill myself, because in the end, it was the same thing. I don't know if I really woke up after that. I opened my eyes another day, in the same old room, but it was calm, bright. It looked normal. The bed made, the dresser back in place, the window shut tight with pale morning light streaming in. I sat up slowly, testing the floor with my feet. It was firm, cold, real. I looked at my hands. They were shaking, but not bleeding. For a few seconds, I let myself believe. Maybe it was over. Maybe I'd won. But then I noticed it. The crack in the wall by the bed, a thin split, almost invisible. Inside it, pure darkness, black as death. And from it came a sound, low, wet, like a held breath. I sat there listening for what felt like hours, until I understood it wasn't the room breathing. It was me. That sound came from my chest. I closed my eyes, and I didn't dare open them again, because if I looked around, I knew I'd see the walls pulsing. I knew I'd see words etched in to make me stay. I knew I'd see myself, smiling in the dark. And I knew that when that happened, there'd be no going back, because even if I ever woke up again, it wouldn't be me anymore. Our time for now is at an end, but the darkness never sleeps. If you had the courage to come this far, prove you do not fear the unknown. Subscribe to this channel and pledge your loyalty to forbidden knowledge. Return whenever you dare. I'll be waiting in the shadows, ready to reveal secrets that should never be heard.